Good morning, dear students. Welcome to the online class of English. I hope you all are fit and fine at your homes. Children, today we are going to begin with our next unit of course book, that is Unit 3, Conflict and Hope. In this, we will be doing Section 3, that is Refugee Blues, and this is a poem written by W.H. Auden. Here you can see the picture of W.H. Auden. Now before moving ahead, I would like to give you a brief introduction about the poet W.H. Auden. Weston Hugh Auden was born in the year 1907 in York in England. He was an English-American poet, applauded means praised, especially for his technical and stylistic achievements and for his ability to write in any form of verse. Verse means poetry, means he had the talent to write in any form of poetry. He rose to fame with poems published in the year 1930. So he became very famous after his poems were published in the year 1930. His most notable works include Funeral Blues, September 1, 1939, The Age of Anxiety, and For the Time Being. He won the Pulitzer Prize in Poetry in 1947 for The Age of Anxiety. A man both controversial and influential, Auden died in the year 1973 of natural causes. Now, a brief introduction about the poem Refugee Blues. First of all, I would like to tell you the meaning of the word refugee and blues. Refugee is a person who goes to another country to escape being mistreated for religion or politics. Children, like refugee उसको बोला जाता है who leaves his country and comes to the other country for shelter because he's been mistreated in his or her own country. Children, here I would like to give you an example. In 1947, when there was partition between India and Pakistan, at that time the people, those who came from Pakistan to India, they were the refugees. जो लोग पाकिस्तान से इंडिया में आए थे या जो लोग इंडिया से पाकिस्तान गए थे सेटल होने के लिए, उनको refugees बोला गया था, right? In the similar way, refugee is a person who leaves his or her own country and goes to other country, जो अपना देश छोड़कर दूसरे देश में चले जाते हैं for shelter के लिए, क्योंकि उनको अपनी country में ill treatment मिला. And refugee refers to slow sad song. So this poem is basically a slow sad song which dramatizes the condition of Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany in the years before World War II. इस पोएम में हम Jewish refugee के बारे में पढ़ेंगे and also we will read about the plight, about his condition, that what were the difficulties that Jewish refugee faced while he came to the other country for shelter. He was not alone, he was along with his companion. So what were the difficulties and what was the situation over there that he faced? This is all what we are going to read about in this poem. Now coming to the structure of this poem. The poem is structured by having 3 lines in each stanza. The first 2 lines of every stanza talks about a situation, and the third, or you can say the last line, is about breaking the news gently to his companion, or you can say the poet has used the word dear for his companion. The rhyme scheme of this poem is A-A-B. Now, before I start with the detailed explanation of the poem, children, you need to have some basic knowledge or information about the times at which this poem was written, and you also need to know who were the Jews and where did they live, why did they have to leave their own country, etc. So we will be reading these lines as it will form a base of our poem. Jews lived in Europe for nearly 2000 years. So Jews, children, basically it refers to a community, a race, and they lived in Europe for nearly 2000 years. They experienced racist hostility and persecution, and they started experiencing racist hostility. Hostility means enmity, or you can say not friendly. So they started experiencing enmity on the basis of race, and not only this, they were also being ill treated. They were persecuted. Persecuted means being ill treated. उनके ऊपर अत्याचार होने लगा. अब ये अत्याचार कौन कर रहा था? In the 1920s, German Jews began to face poor treatment from a group led by Adolf Hitler. In 1920s, जब 1920s means 23, 24, 1920s में German Jews जो थे, they started experiencing poor treatment from a group of people who were led by Adolf Hitler. जो Adolf Hitler के followers थे, जो उसको मानते थे. Adolf Hitler was a ruler, and he hated Jews. So his soldiers and the people who followed him, they started ill-treating the German Jews. In 1933, Hitler introduced laws which deprived German Jews of their human rights and their lives. And in 1933, Hitler introduced such laws which deprived the Jewish people of their human rights and even of their lives. Death squads hunted down Jews in order to kill them. So soldiers, they were looking out for Jewish people to kill them. In the 1930s, many German Jews looked for refuge and became refugees abroad. And in 1930s, many German Jewish people, they left their country because they were ill-treated by the people of Adolf Hitler, and they took refuge in other countries abroad. At first, they were received kindly, but as war approached, many countries became reluctant to take them, at least in large numbers. So in the beginning, when they started taking refuge, people, received them kindly. They had sympathy for them. But gradually, when large number of people, they started taking refuge in other countries, then the people of the other countries also, they became reluctant. Reluctant means hesitant of accepting the Jews in their own country. In this poem, we will be reading about the condition of the Jewish refugees from Nazi Germany in the years before World War II. So this poem is basically going to describe the plight. Plight means the condition of the Jewish refugees. So the poem describes the condition of Jewish refugees during the period of Nazi Germany, with a particular emphasis on how they were discriminated against and antagonized. Antagonized means protest or provoked. मतलब उनके खिलाफ कैसे लोग उनको ट्रीट कर रहे थे, या उनके कैसे उनके साथ डिस्क्रिमिनेशन कर रहे थे, and how they were ill treated. Now what is the setting of the poem? कि जो जब पोम लिखी गई उसकी सेटिंग क्या है? The poem is set in some foreign country wherein the speaker and his companion took refuge. So this poem is set in a foreign country, not in Germany, but in a foreign country where the speaker, as I told you earlier also, the speaker is not alone, he is along with his companion. The speaker and his companion took refuge. This is seen from the indifference of the people and also from the sentence verse, if we let them in, they will steal our daily bread. So this line shows that how the people of the other countries, they were reluctant in accepting them. Children, I am not going to read the summary of the poem because I'll be explaining you the poem in detail. The tone of the poem. The tone of the poem is melancholic. Melancholic means sad. It is depressing and devastating. Why it is depressing? मतलब परेशान कर देने वाली थोड़ी उदास poem है. Why? Because it is describing the condition of the refugees, those who have gone to the other country, and what are the difficulties that are faced by them, and also how the people of that country are not willing to accept them. Now let's see the poetic devices that has been used in this poem. Number one is hyperbole. Hyperbole, it is the use of exaggeration as a figure of speech. Children, hyperbole होता है कि जब किसी बात को हम बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ा चढ़ा कर बोलते हैं, राइट? तो जैसे जब भी अब हम इस पोम में देखेंगे कि समथिंग इज़ बीइंग एग्जैजरेटेड, बढ़ा चढ़ा कर बताया गया हुआ है, then that line will be an example of exaggeration, or you can say, sorry, hyperbole. Next is metaphor. Metaphor is used to make a comparison between two things that are not alike but have something in common. So metaphor, as we have studied earlier also, it is used to make comparison between two things that are not alike but do have some characteristic features in common. Next is imagery. Imagery is the use of language to improve the reader's experience through their senses, that is oral and visual. Imagery क्या है children? Imagery is something that appeals to your senses. अब senses you know आपके 5 हैं, जैसे skin, eyes, ears, nose, टंग, ये आपके 5 सेंसेस हैं जो आपको स्मेल, हियर और फील, टेस्ट, ये सब करने में हेल्प करते हैं. तो अब बेसिकली जो इमेजरी है वो 2 सेंसेस को अपील करती है. वन इज़ ओरल एंड द अदर इज़ विजुअल. मीन्स when you listen, it creates an oral sound, मतलब इम्प्रेशन इन योर माइंड, आपके दिमाग में आवाज़ें गूंजें, देन दैट इज़ ओरल इमेज, राइट. और विजुअल इमेज यानी आपके दिमाग में एक पिक्चर क्रिएट हो जाए. तो यानी जब आपको आवाज़ सुनाए, मतलब आवाज़ के जैसा इम्प्रेशन आपके माइंड में क्रिएट हो जाएगा, सो देन दैट सेंटेंस विल बी एन एग्जाम्पल ऑफ ओरल इमेज. एंड इफ़ an image will be created in your mind, then that sentence will be an example of visual imagery. Next is rhyme scheme. Rhyme scheme is the ordered pattern of rhymes at the end of the lines of a poem or verse. Children, rhyme scheme क्या होती है? Basically it is ordered pattern of rhyme. Rhyming, जैसे मैं आपको पहले भी बता चुकी हूँ, rhyming होती है जो हर लाइन का लास्ट वर्ड होता है ना, that matches with the नेक्स्ट लाइन और नेक्स्ट टू नेक्स्ट लाइन, मतलब जिसके साथ भी मैच कर रहा होता है, तो देन इट हेल्प्स इन क्रिएटिंग द rhyme scheme of the poem. Last is repetition, the action of repeating something that has already been said or written. Yes children, in this poem you will find a lot many examples of repetition, or every paragraph third line, every paragraph's third line is an example of repetition, because in this poem, in the third line of each paragraph, a repetition is used.